Yeah, you're good. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we'll get started. This is the time we have scheduled for a workshop. This will be a workshop to discuss the collaboration between the Caldwell Fire Department and the Caldwell Rural Fire. And I guess, Chief, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. President, council members, members of the community, and city staff. My name is Rick Frawley. I'm the fire chief for the Caldwell Fire Department, as well as for the Caldwell Rural Fire Protection District. So I'm here to represent the city and also speak to the collaboration and the partnership that we've had with the rural district, dating back to the formation of the district and the current process that we have. If I could start with the first PowerPoint presentation, and the next slide, please. Thank you. So City Council has requested a workshop to review the current collaboration between the city and the district. This presentation outlines the history and the working partnership between both agencies and the shared future vision that we have as a community, and that's an ongoing process that I'm going to speak to as we present this PowerPoint presentation. Next slide, please. As you can see from the slide in the presentation, this outlines the response area for both the city as well as the district. The city area that you see in yellow and the district that you see in the white outline of the map that we have. This is representative of the growth that we're seeing as a community, as well as some of the growth elements that we're starting to see in the district itself. Next slide. So the original agreement, the original life safety agreement was in 2005. It's updated annually. There's an updated process that we bring forth to council to approve any updates or changes in the agreement. The last update occurred in October of last year. The administrator is the Caldwell City Fire Chief, so I function as the chief in the city and as the chief for the fire district. We presented draft budget numbers that are provided to the district by the second Monday in May, and one of the pieces that I'll speak to towards the end of the presentation is some of the conversations that I had with the commissioners when I attended their meeting in mid-April. The contract runs from October 1st to September 30th of every year, and this is a process that we go through their planning process as a district that also aligns with our vision as a city, because we operate jointly when we respond to emergencies. The last full revision was in 2009, and that's a process that took place when we reviewed the depth of the relationship with the district. Next slide, please. To give you an example in terms of response that we currently have within the city as well as within the district, these are numbers from 2021 using ESO, which is our reporting software we're using the fire department to record our response data as well as our medical response data. The city responded to 7,402 calls, about 85% of our call volume in 2021. That was the breadth of our emergency response. The fire district responses in that same time frame were 1,055, and that equated to 12.21% of our call volume. Mutually given was 151 calls. Those were responses out of the city and out of the district, and that accounted for 2.1% of our call volume. Next slide, please. This slide here indicates what we call a heat map. It shows the responses that we have within the city as well as the responses that we have within the district. So this slide kind of speaks to some of the hot spots that you can see in areas that are starting to emerge with increased call volume in the communities of Notice, Greenleaf, but more predominantly, as you can see with the data in this slide, the vast majority of the calls are still centered around the city perimeter, the city itself, as well as in the southern part of the district footprint, progressing down towards the lake. Next slide, please. So the population numbers that we're estimating in terms of the city versus the district. City is serving approximately 62,000 residents within the city of Caldwell. District currently 17,377. As you can see, Greenleaf, portions of Middleton, Notice, and unincorporated areas account for that 17,000 number. Some of the pieces that we're discussing as we vision, we plan with the district is the growth that's anticipated in those areas as development expands further west out into the communities of Greenleaf and Notice. We're having conversations and discussions with the district to identify what potential needs might be in the future for service delivery. Now, at this point, I'm going to transition over to retired Chief Wendelsdorf. He currently functions as the manager for the fire district. He was appointed last year, and he's going to speak about some of the history of the relationship, and then I'm going to circle back with the last few slides. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to visit with you. I would like to introduce, we do have one of our fire district commissioners, Mr. Beaucamp, who is with us, and as one of our fire district commissioners. So he may also be able to shed some light on a few things as we go through. The history, as we talked, the history has been long between the city and the district for many years. Prior to 1988, Station 1 was staffed with 6 firefighters. Minimum staffing was 5. And so what would happen is in a call in the fire district, 2 of the paid members would go out to the district. 2 of the paid on call or volunteers would come in and get the water tender, and then the rest of the volunteers would go out to the scene. And for that reason, the district at that time, prior to 1988, paid for 2 members or 2 of the positions. The budgets were completely separate. The equipment was completely separate. And so we literally had, this was a rural engine, this was a city engine, this was the rural tender, this was a city piece of equipment. And so everything at that particular point in time was basically kept separate. We had things that were labeled rural hose, for example. And you didn't put rural hose on a city engine, you didn't put city hose on a rural engine. We kept everything separate at that particular point in time. And so that created some challenges for us as we went through the process. Next slide, please. So from 1989 to 96, the budgets remained about the same as far as being separate. We've seen the equipment that was still being separate at that particular point in time, but we started standardizing the responses. It didn't matter if it was a structure fire in the city or a structure fire in the district, everybody went on those types of calls. We would bring half of the career staff back to the station for coverage. All of the volunteers would end up going out to the scene at that particular point in time to help augment or help work with the staff. Next slide. So from 97 to 2002, we started to notice at that particular point in time that the equipment in the city was getting used a whole lot more than the equipment in the rural. More calls in the city. And so we would literally have equipment that was out of service inside on the city engine, but it was in service on the rural engine, but the rural engine didn't go on city calls. And so finally, about 1997, we began to change that and standardize our response and share equipment. When we ordered hose, we all chipped in, we bought whatever amount of hose we needed, and we just labeled it with each one got their own identifying number, but we didn't track whether it was a rural purchase or a city purchase. When we purchased a fan or a piece of equipment, we didn't label it as being city or rural. We maintained that it was the fire department at that particular point in time. Also around the same point in time, the regional hazmat team was shared between Boise, Caldwell, and Napa. At that particular point in time in '99, the Boise Fire Department decided they would start their own regional hazmat team. And so they came out of the Joint Powers Agreement, and we share that today with the city of Napa. And that's a contract between the 2 cities and the Bureau of Homeland Security, or has most of our emergency management stuff with it. So that's housed out at our Notice Station. And at that particular point in time, we stopped tracking our equipment. Can I have the next slide, please? So from about 2003 to 21, we tried different funding formulas to try and come up with different ways to make the funding appropriate. And we would get into a funding formula for a year or two and then figure out, well, it doesn't work because it didn't address this. And then we would try something else. It didn't work. And so we kept trying to do that. About 2013 and on, we tried to maintain about a 90% pass-through from the rural fire district to the city. And what we did is we have a 20-year plan that's put together that allows for us to kind of project what those costs will be and what those budgetary revenues will be, and allows us to do the planning for that. So, Chief, did you want me to talk about the next?
Oh, no, I can.
The property tax one, or
Oh,
did
no,
you?
yeah.
Okay, so, can we go back just for a second? So, the way in which we have the budget set up is about 70% of the overall budget for the fire department went to union and wages and benefits. 15% went to maintenance and operations, 10% went to non-union employee wages and benefits, and then 5% went into capital. What would end up happening is when the new growth and annexation would come in, the finance, we would work with them to bring in new growth and annexation at 24 mils, 0.0024 into the fire department budget. And then it was up to the city council as to whether or not they would allow us the 3% increase in property tax over the years. For various years, for various reasons, we would sometimes get the 3%, sometimes we wouldn't, and whatever was in between at that particular point in time. So on to the next slide, please. This is the property tax breakdown. So the total assessed market value of the city of Caldwell is 6.4, let's just say $6.5 billion. The total assessed value of the fire district is 2.1. The city of Caldwell uses property tax funding of about $5.3 million or $5.4 million to fund the fire department. The $2.1 million that comes into the fire, from the fire district is up there. And when you take the amount of property tax funding and divide it into the market value, actually the opposite way, when you take the market value and divide it into property tax funding, the city of Caldwell, residents in the city of Caldwell pays about 0.0008, and the fire district resident pays about 0.0009. And what that equates to is if you have when I was looking at the news in preparation for this, the average cost in Canyon County of a home is $525,000. When you take the $125,000 out for the homeowner's exemption, $400,000. When you look at the difference on that $400,000 home inside the city limits and outside the city limits in the district, is about $53 a year, $34 a year. And so the rural district person would contribute more towards the fire department by about $53. In addition to that, there is a rating system that's used, not yet, there's a rating system that's used for the fire department, which is called the ISO rating. Inside the city limits, we're an ISO rating of 3, 1 being the very best, 9 being basically no fire protection whatsoever. And so inside the city limits, we have a protection class of 3. I think outside the city limits, that's more than 1,000 feet from a fire hydrant, is a 5. That 5 rating transfers to about $50 more a year in homeowner fire insurance. So the average person out in the district pays about $100 more a year between the property tax and their insurance difference. So we have a 20-year plan that's in place that the rural district uses as well. It's updated regularly. We worked with Carol and LJ when he was here. It's based on population and assessed values and includes Fund 51 as well as Fund 54. And the reason for this is, that I bring this up is because at the end of the year, at the end of the budget cycle, what normally happened is the balance would be transferred into Fund 51, the capital balance. Negative or positive. Obviously, if it was negative, then we were taking money out to pay it. If it was positive, we were moving funds in there. The reason for that is because when we began to look at the carryover of additional funding, how do we refund the district or credit the district for their part of that contribution? And how do we figure that out? And so the decision many years ago was made to put it in capital because it stayed within the fire department, was going to be used for fire department purchases. And so that was the compromise at that particular point in time. So I'm going to turn it back over to the chief and then stand for any questions after he's done.
So we had two studies completed in the fire department in 2008 and 2016. Both of the studies recommended the unification of the city fire department and the fire district. Challenges were some of the funding piece and identifying what that would look like within the city as well as the district. This has been one of the historical pieces that I'm learning as I look back and I learn from Chief and find out why we navigated to where we are today. Next slide, please. The 2005 Fire District annexed the City of Notice. That included Station 8 with fiscal year 2016 being a $50,000 a year added to the contract for the Station 8 expenses. So that was one of the pieces that was identified as a need for the upkeep of the Notice Fire Station or Station 8. Next slide, please. District contribution of the city. Currently the contract indicates a $2.1 million contract cost, which is 28% of the budget, 90% of the property tax rate effective for fiscal year 2022, with $126,000 or 28% going to Fund 51, $50,000 for Station 8 expenses, hence the $1.9 million, $1,924,000 used for personnel and maintenance and operations. Next slide. So part of the staffing piece that we look at when we look at that total amount of money is, and what that equates to, is approximately $1.3 million would be the staffing piece to staff a fire station, with the maintenance and operations cost being approximately 1/3 of that budget, or $404,000, for a total cost of $1,774,792. That's the total cost that we're anticipating for staffing a station, and that's the piece that we work on when we look to service delivery as needed within the community. Next slide, please. Some of the impact fees, or some of the impact fee purchases that have made collaboratively with the district include some of the projects that you see here. The fire district purchased all of the equipment for engine 103. That included hose, nozzles, extrication equipment, fans, EMS equipment, for approximately $225,000. And that's one of the pieces that we do when we previously partnered with the district to try and cost share the added expense of in-servicing for pieces of equipment. Next slide, please. Another example would be these cardiac CPR, cardiac pulmonary resuscitation compression devices known as the Lucas device. The district purchased those at the cost of approximately $10,000 per unit. So again, another example in the past of the district working with fire administration to identify a need within the community. Next slide, please. Refurbishing of one of our reserve engines, engine 111, fiscal year 21-22, at a cost of $350,000. It included a new engine, transmission, pump, paint, extrication equipment, and updated lighting. Again, another collaboration. Purchasing a new rescue brush unit, a new Type 4, which is currently being built at Boise Mechanical Equipment, or BMI, on the other side of the valley. That's expected to be ready for initial review in terms of physically looking at the chassis and the build-up in mid-June. So another piece of equipment that was funded through the collaboration with the district. Used on medical calls based on staffing and grass fires. so at a cost of $250,000. Next slide, please. District Fire Commission meeting. I attended the meeting on April 19th. My goal was to develop a vision for service growth in the district and to meet the commissioners and address any concerns that they may have in terms of our relationship and ways that we can work better together. I made a budget request. I had a budget request conversation with the commissioners, not only to talk about where we currently sit with the $2.1 million index for inflation, but I also wanted to have a conversation about ways that we could look to create a reserve or an auxiliary program that would be funded through the district at Station 8, utilizing a full-time employee funded through the district that would then be a way that we could build up more resources to service the area, but also to build a system that would that we could utilize to hire full-time firefighters. And in that conversation with the commissioners, I brought that forward as a discussion point. I also brought forth the need for funding for personal protective equipment and tuition reimbursement for any students that we funnel into that program, ideally from local community colleges. And that's, again, another feeder system. Additionally, I talked to the commissioners about the option for funding the rebuilding of another one of our reserve apparatus, Engine 112. And those are the pieces that I discussed with the commission. My goal is to continue to build that relationship with them, but also to be transparent in terms of what I can bring back to council. And that's my goal, is to be very open in terms of the conversations and our planning for the future. Next slide, please. So the next steps for shared vision would be to initiate strategic planning and a process both in the communities that are served by the district, but also how that impacts our city. And I'd ideally like to identify timelines for resource training and development. One of my visions would be sometime in the fall to identify 2 members of council to be part of a planning vision meeting with a member of the commission, and we can talk about the shared visions, talk about growth, how it's impacting both our city as well as the areas of the rural district as well. I'd like, as part of the budget process, that'll also tie into future forecasting in a 2-year, 3-year, and 5-year time frame as we all grow collectively, and this will be part of the conversation that we have for staffing for fiscal year 2022, or 23, I'm sorry. Next slide, please. In conclusion, the Caldwell Fire Department and the Caldwell Rural Fire District had a strong history of partnership that serves both areas with the shared resources that both staffing and capital assets. The needs within these areas can be met with an ongoing partnership and collaboration, but I'm also here to answer your questions and also talk about council's direction for the future in terms of ways that we can share information. And I thank you for your time.
Questions?
Mr. President,
Yeah,
I don't know who could answer this one, but regarding the union folks versus the regular folks, any way to consolidate that so we're not, are we going to be bargaining with 2 separate groups then?
Well,
or how does that work?
Historically, the union component is part of a collective bargaining agreement.
Okay.
And the management or the unrepped employees are not part of that union. So, that's a separate conversation that takes place with human resources and with finance and with me and my recommendations to you.
Okay,
so it's kind of a separate piece.
So we'll be bargaining with 2 separate units then, is that correct or not?
Well, no, there's actually no bargaining
okay.
with unrepped employees. It's more of a conversation, and and it would be my recommendation to council to address any of those issues. And,
okay. So we might assume that whatever the union folks get, that's what the regular folks will get, or?
Not always. In my
okay.
Yeah, sometimes it's going to be different. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe Mr. Wendelstorff can answer this one, but because Rick is new to the area, but I talked to a colleague of mine over at Middleton, and their future plans is that they plan on having another 7,100 homes in that area. Have we taken that into consideration?
That's definitely one of the pieces that we're talking about, not just in Middleton, but also the development that's going to be going around Notice and around Greenleaf. I attended some CERT training in Greenleaf last weekend, and there's 111 homes being built around the cemetery across from the City Hall in Greenleaf. And there's 2 open lots in front of Fire Station 8, notice, that are in the preparatory phases. And then the Middleton piece is a large development, to your point. And that's all part of the visioning of a staffing need. I've had conversations with Chief Kaminsky in Middleton Star to form stronger relationships, and knowing that they're gonna be impacted, we're gonna be impacted, and we can share resources as needed to address the needs. Because my personal belief is closest fire engine should respond to an emergency, and that way we can share the challenges that we're all facing.
I was just concerned about the budget items, that we might be hit with something that, is in the future, we need to think about.
I think it's definitely part of a 5-year plan. I think that's definitely a phased approach. After we get the truck in service, we'll look to see what it's gonna look like as these developments roll out, and as that impacts staffing, being the biggest challenge, because that's, one of the more costly pieces of deploying resources.
Okay.
Your biggest challenge there, if I may, is gonna be House Bill 389 with that 8% cap. Because there's a good chance if that's built in 2 years, that the rural district would leave about $300,000 to $400,000 on the table. They would exceed the cap of that 8%.
Well, one committee I'm on, we're hoping to defeat some of those folks so we can get the other one that's in the drawer, Mr. Harris, back out and get real property tax relief here. Do you think 5% capital is enough on a budget for equipment, because it's awful expensive?
Yeah, and that's a challenge when you look to see where we were in the last 20 years to where we are today. The capital piece is very challenging with the inflationary rates that we're looking at. With to give you an example, a fire engine would cost $600,000 3 years ago. Now close to $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
So it's outstripping the ability for us to save, and I think that's an ongoing challenge that we're going to have to address from potentially a bigger perspective in terms of making outreach to our community for assistance down the road.
Because I'd rather have you folks overestimate that than underestimate, because it's always tough to come back when you underestimate. You know how that works.
Exactly.
So,
And to that point, I think it's also important to realize, your human capital is probably the piece that is the most important in making sure you can grow your firefighters to meet the need, and then try to find a way to get your capital for apparatus and facilities.
Okay.
Mr. Stock, if I may, also in addition to that 5%, the fees that we get from the power, from Idaho Power, that also went into capital.
Oh, okay.
And so you had about $200,000 going in from there, plus about $100,000 coming in from property tax, and then about another $120,000 coming in from the rural district.
So was that included in that 5% then, or is that over and above?
Tax money.
Oh, okay.
That was just property tax.
Okay, all right. Being ignorant of acronyms, what does ISO stand for?
Insurance Service.
Organization.
I've never heard that one before, so.
Insurance Service Rating Bureau.
What was it?
Insurance Service Rating Bureau is the organization that comes out and does it, but it's a insurance service office. They rate properties throughout the United States on how insurable they are for casualty and theft and fire.
Okay. The other question I had is I sat in on some of the fire district meetings with Napa a year or two ago, and I was just wondering how they turned all their fire stuff over to the district, is that correct? Okay. How does that intertwine with what we're doing here?
Well, they made a strategic decision to navigate towards a district model, mainly for a funding piece, is my understanding. I do understand they have a higher levy rate, so they're in a more advantageous fiscal perspective. But it's relatively new for them. But I just had meetings with Chief Carpenter this weekend. We were all meeting as fire chiefs, and it seems to be a positive environment that they're working in currently. So.
Okay, so their budgeting process, including all the equipment they need, is going to be incorporated into this consolidation that we're doing. Is that correct? Yes? Okay, all right.
Within their district.
Yeah.
So one big district.
And for the taxpayers and myself, looking at my, 2021 tax deal, of course, fire is not separated out, but does it come under the city budget, county budget, or both, when they have the levy rate?
I believe
How does
it's
that work?
city budget, yeah. Yeah.
City budget? Okay, nothing under the county then, just city? Okay,
Unless you're a county, unless you live in the county,
yeah,
then you will depend on what county you're in. For example, I live in Nampa, but I'm in the impact area, I'm in the county, so I am assessed and have an assessed, with the rural district.
okay, all right. Okay, that's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any other questions? The fire commissioner, would you like to add anything, sir?
Chief Reynolds takes his shoe off, it's because I'm saying something I shouldn't say and he's gonna hit me. My name's Buzz Bocamp. I live out at the end of 10th Street and Orchard in the county area. I'm a fire district commissioner. I've been one since 2016. And we've been very, very proactive with the city. We do not have any employees. We have a service contract with the city. So you handle all the H&R and we basically pay a service contract every month. It works out well for us. I can tell you that, you know, the one thing in our district that, well, I speak for myself. I'm absolutely scared of all the development that's going on. Because of our legislature, we cannot keep up with the costs that are going to happen because of all the development. We recently have impact fees for the district. We had to get that approved through the county to collect, and so we're very happy that now we have impact fees on all new development, commercial and residential. I can say that we've been looking at what 389, Legislative Bill 389 has done to us, and it's frightening because the legislature's tied our hands. As you can imagine, everybody here has a house. Everybody here is subject to fire and emergency services. I look at my tax bill through the county, and it makes me very, very mad that 2/3 of my tax bill goes to Valley View School District. I have no children in the school. I have no grandchildren or great-grandchildren in the school. But the thing that I look at is, oh my gosh, I barely pay anything compared to Valley View School to the fire district. And I think it's a very, very effective if we could raise our tax rate, but we're allowed only 3% per year. So one of the things that has been discussed, and I think it's been discussed by the new chief, is going through and having a safety bond issue so that we could increase our fire services. That would be the one way to fund to try to get ahead or catch up to all the development. My district is kind of funny. We have two very nice large districts, District 3 and District 2. Mine is District 1, and on the map, I have all the holes in the Swiss cheese around the city. So all the little spots that aren't city, that's my district. One of the things that's coming up is we do cover the south part of the Boise River out to, I think, Middleton Road, or beyond Middleton Road? Yeah. Middleton Road. And out there is, oh, here we go. There we are, next one. There we go. Mine is all the white area around it. If you show 10th Street and 10th Avenue, everything this side on the map, or it's reversed, everything that's in white is all the Swiss cheese is my district. So, and if you notice where it says 113 North Auto Aid, up in that area, we're looking at what's going to be called Quarry East and Quarry West. And it's actually inside the Middleton city impact area, but we as the rural district will be covering that. And there are how many houses? 950 houses going in, and most of those are going to be $1 million houses because they're around the former gravel pits, which are now ski lakes. So you can imagine all the people are going to be skiing, and water skiing is not an unhazardous situation. So what we're looking at is, there's so much growth happening. One of the things that Chief Wendelsdorf came in and told us a few years ago was we had a 5-year plan of what growth was going to do. And at the end of 2 years, we'd exceeded that 5-year plan. So that's the thing that scares me, is how many more houses we're going to have for the fire coverage that we have. We were very, very excited about having Station 3 built. It's a wonderful station. What we actually need is, 3 more stations like it, I think? 2 probably to the east, or 2 to the west and 1 to the east, so that we can catch up to what the growth is going to be, both in the city and in the rural district. At one time, we thought we might consider consolidating like Nampa. Well, when 389 came in, Nampa actually got a special agreement and special legislation to consolidate their district. With the way that 389 has limited our budget, limited our ability to get money from new growth, we looked at it and said, there's no way that we can afford it. Absolutely no way we can afford it. And the only way that might be a possibility is if there's a performance bond that both the city and the rural district combine resources to go through. One item that was mentioned was the performance bond should be enough to build and staff and put the equipment into 3 stations. And I'm almost afraid to figure out what that might cost, but that would be one of our options for hopefully the near future. So, any questions?
Questions?
Mr. President?
And maybe Mark can answer this question too. You and I were at a meeting up in Boise here several years ago about cookie cutter fire stations to save money for the taxpayers. Is that still on the board yet, or is that went by the wayside?
No, actually, the Station 3 is very similar to Meridian Station 6. And so, because of some budget constraints, we had to downsize the 2 areas. But no, we were still looking at the exact same thing, and that saved us some money when we built the station.
Okay, and are we going to share any of those stations with paramedics or anybody else that can help offset some of that cost? Or?
Yeah, and ironically enough, we thank the council for approving the agreement with Canyon County paramedics, but they're now in Station 1, and we're having conversations with Canyon County to make sure that we include not just paramedics, but also a law enforcement piece as well. We want our police officers to be able to come in, do report writing, and also make it more of a community resource at the same time. The architects that designed Station 3 were the meeting, the chief's meeting I just went to. We talked about, the set of plans, and it's such a great design that we want to be able to replicate that and move forward with that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir, appreciate it very much.
Well, I wanted to thank council for the opportunity to present, and we also have our new truck here. I failed to mention at the beginning, if there's time before the council meeting, we would love to show council this new resource. So thank you.
And before we close this workshop, is there anybody in the audience that has a question or something before we close? Well, we got all the chiefs and commissioner here. This is a great time to ask if you have a question.
This is Mitchell, thank you.
Oh, well, Mrs. Mitchell, thank you.
If I may.
Thank you, Council President. Council, Councilman Static, you asked about a budget, and I just want to make sure we answered that question correctly, and you provided the information, when you were asking about the budget and Nampa Fire District. Can you, I just want to make sure we're clarified on the response.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that we're coordinating both, because to me, from when I got out of that meeting, we're still kind of separate entities.
We are, correct.
And that created a little bit of concern for me, because if we're separate entities, sometimes we always don't agree, and that could be a major game changer for both the city and the district, so.
So, Nampa Rural Fire District is a separate entity from the Caldwell Rural Fire District. They're both two separate taxing districts. And then the city of Caldwell, you asked about the levy rate. The levy rate that the city levies and certifies with the county is inclusive with the fire department for the city of Caldwell.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Mitchell? Thank you very much. We will call this workshop to a close, and we will resume at 7 o'clock for the regular council meeting. Very good to see you, Chief Untitled.
Nice to see you, sir. Thank you for your time. Yes, absolutely.
I have my CDL and air brakes. Can you try that? Just around the block. No?
Thanks for coming out. Appreciate it.
You bet.
I gotta get, my wife always do it. Hi, Rick, nice to meet you. Do you drive? Because I was talking to Sarah, and I was asking her about the racetrack. Because my wife was excited about going to the racetrack. She's a big fan. Yeah, she used to.
I'm taking a year off.
Good for you.
For family.
Good for you. That's important. That's important.
Yes.
I took a year off from going to dog shows, but then I got roped back in.
Dog shows.
He shows dogs.
It's great. Oh, I want to go to that. Can we like swap tickets?
There was one 3 weekends ago. Yeah. But they didn't have a breed. But next year they're going to have a breed. We're going to be there. We're going to invite some friends too. Man, how'd you tell me campers they have parked out there? Like they were here all week. But seriously, I mean, you spend a lot of money doing these kind of dog shows. My wife's going to one at Nashville in October. That's the big one. That's
Well, look on the radio TV schedule. If there's a race you want to go to, we can get your tickets.
Well, only if you guys are going to be there.
Oh, we're there all the time.
Okay.
I mean, I won't be racing. My dad might be,
Her
but.
dad still races. If your dad's racing, then her good buddy races.
But there's also the Eve of Destruction. Oh my gosh.
No,
So much fun.
I saw that. Because my wife's kind of given up on NASCAR just because her driver left, and then
Who's our driver?
she loved Casey Kasem.
I'm related to him.
No way.
His brother is married to my cousin, so I guess I'm
Small world.
a little bit related.
You are. When she went to, and then I used to work with a guy that's really good friends with, what's the name of the kid out of Sacramento? He's no longer a kid.
And that's all they want.
Get out of Sacramento.
Like I had to go in and put in
Travis.
stations or current stations or.
Kyle Larson's from down there. It wasn't Kyle Larson. I can't remember who it was. Anyway, so there's apparently this big race every Thanksgiving down in Ventura County. So like the Bushes show up, it's like the Thanksgiving turkey race. Oh, it's gotta be a local track. Yeah, it's a local thing in Ventura County. So my buddy Ernie would go to that. That's where he'd go for Thanksgiving. That's what I watched this afternoon. I watched the Dover race this afternoon. Yeah. You watched out yesterday. I did, yeah. I watched the finish on my guy won the day. Yeah. Because when I talked to my wife yesterday coming back from Fort Lane, she's like, yeah, the race got washed out. Yeah. They raced, they finished it up today. Yeah, I did road ethics day for West NASCAR. That's what I know. So, I'm looking to see if the council's going. Oh, no, it looks like they're just hanging out.
Okay, as long as they're happy. Yep. Yep. And then, Councilor Bowie, you know, Sarah's gonna be signing the first, now. Yeah, you do, the sooner I get it handed out, we get working on it quickly, like, 6 o'clock. Yeah, I'm surprised you remember my name, I talked to him while we were on a call, I was like, oh, hey, we're right with the cops, why don't you come right with us, we can it'd be great, I think that's that education, they don't really know. Well, I know, I mean, it's like he's asking about the unique criteria, what I have, I'm like, how do I say that, you never, no, you don't negotiate with us, yeah, you negotiate with them. You tell us, basically, you get, yeah, I get what you tell me, yeah. Yep. How to get it. Good. 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 So they don't know me yet. The key to that one undercover. No, ladder trucks tomorrow, county shop. No, the old one gets stripped. Big radio and cradle point.
I have a feeling. Yeah, well, I talked to him later. It's just, he was on his, which is a little sad. Hi, how are you? Good. Hi. How are you? That was lovely.
Yeah, no, thank you. I see you again. Ready to go? Cool. Yeah, no, hopefully.
I don't know about that one. I only know about the one that's up there. No, big, sorry, yeah, no. Well, they did, but for
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll get started. Welcome to the Caldwell City Council meeting. It is 7 p.m. and we will get started with benediction and the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll all rise, and Pastor Sperry, if you'll come forward, please.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we come before you as the supreme judge of this world. We thank you for who you are. We thank you, Lord, for the promise of your word, where you said that the government rests upon the shoulders of our Messiah Jesus. We ask that this meeting now, as it's committed into your hands, would give you that honor and glory. We trust you for it. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Will the clerk call the roll, please?
Alden.
Here.
Williams.
Here.
Jody.
Here.
Scotty.
Here.
Register. McGee.
Here. Wonderful. Thank you. Is there any conflict of interest with any of the items on the agenda tonight, council members? Hearing none, we'll move forward. We have a special proclamation this evening. This is for National Small Business Week, and I will read this into the record. Whereas America's strongest economic growth in almost 40 years has been driven by the resilience of our small businesses who, despite a worldwide pandemic, continue to pioneer innovative solutions to our country's greatest challenges and create opportunities for families and workers. Whereas from the storefront shops that anchor Main Street to the high-tech startups that keep America on the cutting edge to the small manufacturers driving our competitiveness in the global stage, small businesses are the backbone of our economy and the cornerstones of our nation's promise. And whereas we support small business, jobs are created and local communities preserve their unique culture, and whereas because this country's 32.5 million small businesses create nearly 2 out of 3 jobs in our economy, we cannot resolve ourselves to create jobs and spur economic growth in America without discussing ways to support our entrepreneurs. And whereas the President of the United States has proclaimed National Small Business Week every year since 1963 to highlight the programs and services available to entrepreneurs through the U.S. Small Business Administration and other government agencies. And whereas Caldwell supports and joins in this national effort to help Caldwell small businesses do what they do best, grow their business, create jobs, and ensure our local communities remain as vibrant tomorrow as they are today. Now therefore I, Jerome Wagner, Mayor of the City of Caldwell, do hereby proclaim May 1st through May 7th as National Small Business Week. It's signed by Mayor Wagner. Irene?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And if you want to say anything, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. As we know, the last few years certainly have been a challenge, and day in and day out, we are helping businesses, both startup and existing, through all of our different challenges and growth phases too. And I work with your economic development folks here, the chambers, and they're wonderful people, and it's always great to see the businesses grow and thrive. And during this week, our theme is entrepreneurs are, I just did this and I just said it too. We are building America through entrepreneurship. And so as we grow, we definitely want to encourage and support small businesses. And I know that the governor is going to be supporting small businesses, I believe it's Friday, and it's supporting Idaho gems. And they are the gems of our community. So thank you, and I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. All right, is there anybody in the audience that would like to address something on the council that is not on the agenda? If there is, please come forward at this point. Seeing none, we will move forward with the consent calendar. I understand there's a change.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
I move that we amend the consent calendar to remove item number 2, since the, agreement has not been fully executed yet.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Moved by Councilman Williams, second by Councilman Stotty. Clerk, call the roll, please.
Williams,
Yes.
Register,
Yes.
Dottie,
Yes.
Jody,
Yes.
McGee,
Yes.
Thank you, and Madam Clerk just brought something to my attention that I forgot to say. Because we have a even number of people with the absence of the mayor, I will not be voting this evening to avoid a tie situation on any decision that's made. All right, moving forward, we have nothing on the agenda under old business. Under new business, we have a public hearing, quasi-judicial. And before we get started, I will read the opening statement for quasi-judicial. How come I can't say that tonight? Hearings. A quasi...
You have to approve the consent calendar.
Hear me now? Yes, so, Council President Allgood, what I've heard was a motion to remove an item from the consent agenda, but
Oh,
not a
okay.
motion to actually approve the remainder of it.
Gotcha, okay. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. I thought we were just approving the amended agenda. Anyway, I will accept the motion to accept the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Councilman Stotty, seconded by Councilman Williams. Clerk, call the roll, please.
Dottie,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Register, Jody,
Yes.
McGee.
Yes.
All right, now I'll get to the instructions of the quasi-judicial hearing. A quasi-judicial hearing involves the consideration of a land use request such as annexation, rezone, classification, or approval of a subdivision preliminary plat. The public hearing procedures, as required by Idaho State Code, are as follows. Oral and written testimony will be accepted from those who have signed in to speak prior to the hearing being declared open. When providing testimony, please come to the podium, state your name and address, which will be included in the record. Staff will first present a report regarding the application being considered. Public testimony, the applicant or applicant's representative will present a summary of the request. Testimony of those in support will be taken, followed by those in neutral position, and finally those in opposition to the request. The applicant will be offered an opportunity to provide rebuttal testimony. All public testimony will be limited to 5 minutes or less. After the rebuttal testimony is given, the public testimony portion of the hearing will be closed and no new oral or written testimony will be allowed. That's the instructions. Okay, this is a public hearing for case number CPM -000001, zone, or ZON 22-000001, Scannell Properties is requesting a comprehensive plan amendment from commercial and services to manufacturing and production, with a concurrent request for a rezone of 6.72 acres from C3 Service Commercial to M1 Light Industrial with a development agreement. The subject property is located at 315 43rd Street and is currently zoned C3, 10.84 acres, and M1 for 12.4 acres. The frontage property along Cleveland Boulevard, approximately 4.12 acres, will remain C3 Service Commercial. The Planning and Zoning Commission forwarded this case with a recommendation of approval on April 12, 2022. Ms. Ruth.
Thank you, Council President. Debbie Root, Senior Planner, 621 Cleveland Boulevard. The case before you tonight is a request to modify the comprehensive plan map from a portion of it from C3 or commercial and services to manufacturing and production for the purpose of rezoning the property to M1 light industrial. The purpose of that rezone request is so that they can better utilize the property to build two large industrial flex buildings, basically. The property being kind of a trapezoidal shape restricts the size of the building that could be built to that northeast end of the property, which is currently zoned M1 light industrial, and it's also manufacturing and services, or manufacturing and production is the underlying comp plan deal. So they're requesting to modify approximately 6.72 acres so that that can be zoned industrial. Being zoned M1 industrial allows for greater flexibility in the potential users of the site. And we've seen this come before the council, the prior council, and even before this council, where we've modified the zoning from C3 to M1 to accommodate that kind of those uses that are there. This request also includes a condition that strikes some of the uses that are not compatible or that we don't want to see on the boulevard, maybe don't belong there. And that list is included in the summary packet that I provided for you, as well as in the staff report that you received with your staff report, or with your council packet. So the challenge with this property, and just to bring this to your attention, is that there is a pocket of 7 kind of residential properties. A couple of them are doing commercial kind of businesses out of their residential properties, but they're located right there on that western boundary of the site. The comp plan has that identified as commercial. It's been identified as commercial for a long time. So those residences aren't anticipated to remain in the long term, but for now they're there, and so we need to be cognizant of that. There are industrial uses to the north and west of this property, and Franklin Building Supply resides to the east of this property, and their proposed truss manufacturing site will be located in the industrial portion of their property as well, to the east of this proposed Scannell site. We have not received any opposition from those residential properties. We did ask that Scannell include a wider landscape buffer along the South 43rd Avenue side of the property. So we made that a 30-foot landscape buffer. Did not require fencing because that tends to
then close in properties even more than what was intended. South 43rd is intended to be the primary street that's going to be signalized at Lake and Cleveland Boulevard there, Caldwell Boulevard. And so, there's not a good way to really insulate those residential properties away from that, because the master plan calls for the signalized intersection there. That's going to be the primary traffic route long-term as that intersection is improved. They are required to complete their portion of Arthur, which bisects the property. This is another reason why the rezone has been requested, because Arthur is going to go through basically the middle of the property and connect. And Arthur is a collector street. It's going to link clear to Ustick and basically it's a backage road to Cleveland, provide Austin. And the city's working hard to get that street improved as development occurs on these properties, and to make sure that that right-of-way is dedicated and improved as development happens. Staff is recommending approval of this development. The site plan there for Grant. There we go. So they're proposing two buildings, on the two industrial-sized buildings on the site, and then the commercial frontage will be limited to commercial retail. There will be no residential structures on this site. It'll be limited to commercial retail. And even though the South 43rd Avenue indicates that it'll go straight down to Cleveland, there will be a need to have a realignment in that southwest corner to align for the traffic signalization there. And so there'll be a portion of that corner that's kind of taken off, but we don't have that plan yet. And then Arthur Street may actually take a little veer to the north just a little bit to accommodate not removing a current residential property that's there. And that has also been discussed. Engineering, Rob McDonald has discussed that with them. It's in the engineering memorandum that's part of that plan. So with that, again, staff is recommending approval of this development as conditioned, and I will stand for questions.
Any questions from Mrs. Root? Mr. Wentz?
Mr. Root, the only concern I would have, and I think you've already addressed it, but because it's on our boulevard, I would want the elevation of it facing the boulevard to really be presentable. This is our mainstay as we continue to develop and move forward. It gives me the idea when we say industrial, of something a little less presentable than what might be commercial. So will that be taken, this is an architectural rendering, but will this be addressed in the development of that property so that it's not,
Well, yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question. One of the conditions in the conditions of approval addresses a design review. Also, what they've provided to us is the rendering that you have here. It's a fairly attractive building. I believe it's a tilt-up concrete, and so it'll be painted. They showed a rendering painted on that bottom. That's a gray paint on the building. You're certainly welcome to specify more if you're wanting to see more articulation of the building. But it does set back from the boulevard, not only the street landscape buffer, but about 250 feet from that. They are proposing that all the dock bays and everything will be facing towards the north, which is away from the boulevard. And, those are all good, positive things for that construction.
Yeah, I think you're addressing my concern. I would want it to look a little nicer than that, even if I had a preference, and I don't know if awnings or if windows, even if they weren't actually windows, if there was more glass, if it looked a little more attractive to people coming into our city, as we continue to develop. So that would be my preference, and thank you.
Okay, I would encourage you to please make a condition that says, when you make a motion or do this, that indicates such, that you want more articulation than what's proposed on the rendering.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from this room? Going way back, Machine, there was a sawmill back there years ago. It's not there anymore, correct?
No.
Okay, there used to be a lumber yard at the end of 43rd, but I'm old.
There's actually a state equipment surplus lot there, and then some machine shop, truck repair shops to the northwest, I guess. And then, part of the mobile home park is to the north of the tracks, the railroad tracks are there, and then the interstate is right there, and then the airport is right on the other side of that. So it's fairly shielded, it's a good place for industrial. You know, the challenge is those few residential properties that are still remaining in this industrial commercial area. Across the street is Grizzly Motorsports and Pond One, you know, a pond store, large pond store, maybe, and so.
Well, and truck traffic's not new to that road because we had the sawmill.
It is not new to that road, no.
Do you have any idea, when the signal is scheduled at that location?
I do not. Brent Orton may.
I loathe to ask for the mic just to tell you that I don't know either.
Okay.
I don't believe it's scheduled according to Rob McDonald, but,
Yeah.
you know, but it is as part of the master plan.
All right, thank you very much. All right, moving to our sign-up list, speaking in favor, and I apologize, I will mess your name up, Momish, and I can't read the last name. But please come forward and say it correctly so we know who you are.
Sure, it's Monish Narlanka.
Okay?
I'm with the applicant group at Canal Properties, and my address is 3468 Mount Diablo Boulevard, Lafayette, California. First of all, thank you, Debbie, for the presentation. I think it, in a concise way, kind of explains what we're trying to do here, which is really just move the zoning line 6 or so acres south. As Debbie showed, Arthur Street, which is going to bisect this property, is going to take up about 1.6 or so acres. So in order to accommodate, a project that's both feasible and kind of efficient with the site plan, we're asking for a slight rezone so that we can put up about 185,000 feet of light industrial product, and then, as Debbie mentioned, the remaining 4.6 or so acres that are on Cleveland Boulevard will remain, commercial, and we've already garnered some interest from service commercial users like gas stations, car washes, that sort of thing, which we think would be a really complementary use in the area with all the other industrial that some of the council members had mentioned exists there. And so, we did a neighborhood meeting and spoke with some of the neighbors in the area, and like you mentioned, Mr. President, they're not new to the truck traffic or sort of the industrial feel of the area, and we're going to do, all that's required in terms of landscaping and buffers to make sure that that the building's, not obtrusive to them, and I think we can achieve that with the plan that, Debbie's laid out. And other than that, you know, I'm happy to answer any questions. We can certainly address the view of the building from Cleveland Boulevard. Happy to do that, and, you know, as Debbie mentioned, it will be set back somewhat significantly, and we're planning to put all the dock doors on the south side, or I guess the north side, the back side of these buildings, to further mitigate that, but, you know, we're excited to be in Caldwell, and, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions?
Mr. President,
Yes.
do you have clients for these buildings already, or is that in the future?
It's in the future, Councilmember. We have, you know, we've kind of been waiting to go through this process before we move forward with anybody.
The only concern I would have is, the number of docking stations you might have and the staging areas behind that building, make sure it doesn't overflow towards the Cleveland Boulevard side or on the side, either west or east side, so.
Sure, yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Lowell, Alseth?
Excuse me. My name is Lowell Alseth. I'm with ZGA Architects. Address is 300 East Mallard Drive, Suite 325, Boise, 83706. And I'm actually here mostly in support of Monish, if there were any questions that I could answer relative to the building itself. We certainly can improve the appearance of it. It's, you know, this is a very basic approach that we took. It's actually based on another project in Caldwell, and that client wanted the more basic look to it. But we understand here, especially before that commercial is built out in front of this, it will be a very visible building from Cleveland Boulevard, so we can certainly appreciate it. You know, if you want to require more embellishment, we are not surprised at that. And I guess, as Debbie said, I just asked it, can be as specific as you can when you're hopefully approving this at the end of all this, and then we can keep the project moving forward. So, are there any questions?
Questions from council? Good. You got it easy tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, there is no one signed up in neutral or in opposition. Are there any more questions from council for anybody that has spoken tonight?
Sorry.
Yes.
I just thought about it when you sat down. Do you have suggestions then that to make it more Christmas? Is that kind of where we're at with it?
Well, the first suggestion is different color palette, because color can make a big difference on a building. This one, that client that we had on this project that we started as an example, they liked the gray tone palette, which has been kind of trendy the last few years. Not my personal favorite, but we try to serve our clients. So that's the first thing. Obviously, you know, we need to keep the project as okay. I was going to say, you know, we obviously need to keep it as cost controlled as we can to make it a viable development, which helps the city to have viable development. I was just handed a list of some a list of possible things that could be done. Not all of these are really necessarily applicable to a concrete tilt-up building, but you know, I think it was mentioned earlier, maybe awning, you know, that's a good way to dress up a building that's, especially a large-scale building like this. Another thing that's done sometimes is, as you can see in the rendering, it's a panelized wall system under the concrete tilt-up, and some of the panels could be taller than the others, give a little bit of variation to the roof line, if you will. And that's something that can be done without adding a huge cost burden to the project, because again, we don't want to just throw money at it, you know. So, but see if any things really jump out at me, but, I'm not seeing anything that's, you know, like specifically a concrete tilt-up sort of application on this list, but we definitely can address the building up some.
Okay. Are you good?
Thank you, sir.
All right. Any other questions for anybody? I will accept the motion to close the public testimony portion of this hearing.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Doty, seconded by Councilman Stotty. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Mr. Waterman, I just have as the evidence list, Ms. Ruth's presentation, noted C1. Do you have anything else?
The sign-in sheets and the testimony, other than that, those are the standard things we're always included, so staff report, PowerPoint presentation, sign-in sheets. But again, those are typically encompassed in the general standard packet.
Perfect, thank you. Accept the motion to accept the evidence list as presented.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Councilman Stotty, seconded by Councilman Doty. All in favor?
Aye.
Are you still there, Mr. McGee?
Yeah, I was an aye.
Okay, thank you. Any opposed? All right. Comments, thoughts from council members before we go to a decision?
I don't mind making a motion for a decision, they want it very specific, though, and I don't know. Check us, things you want very specifically put in the motion, or?
Well, it's hard because I agree, what I don't wanna do is make it cost prohibitive, that it is a burden to the developer, while at the same time recognizing it's on our main thoroughfare. I appreciate the input, I think seeing depth and seeing, different heights and perhaps awnings, it's hard to wanna be specific without being an architect and without knowing what the cost would be, and yet the request is to be specific.
Mr. President, could we make a motion to approve it with another approval for the design later, once it's fixed, and then?
That would be, one of you two want to weigh in on that?
So, Council President, Councilman Register, what I heard was a question asking, can you delay and have a second design review essentially further down so you get a more specific, input on design, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So the city has a design review committee, but my understanding is they only review designs in the city center district. So it'd be sort of odd to task them with that design. The way the conditions are written now, the planning and zoning director will do design review. And anyone who's aggrieved by a decision of the planning and zoning director can appeal it to council. I don't know if our code sets out that the planning and zoning director is the obligatory place where design review occurs. I guess we could have a simple design review item on a subsequent council agenda. I think it's up to the council. My recommendation would be to have a condition, the condition that already exists about design review of planning and zoning. Leave that condition the way it is. Add that specifically the rendering you saw had an insufficient visual variety, and whatever design is the final design has to be more, what was the term, you should use the particular term, Deb?
Articulation.
Articulation.
Color, so I heard, awning, panel variation.
Yes.
So, yeah.
That on a mic, Debbie.
Yes, I'm gonna, she was, we'll pretend she was talking just to me.
Sorry.
Okay, so, color, awning, and, panel height were the three things that were discussed as potential ways to add more visual variety. So, if, the council wants to have a condition that, requires the planning director, when doing design review, look for those three criteria in particular. If the planning director, gets too overboard and requires something, again, that's too intense that creates a cost efficiency problem, the applicant can always come back to you, city council, and you can wind things back or say, no, we agree, that's the right amount, whatever the case may be. But that would be my recommendation, rather than creating a new council item right off the bat to re-review this.
Right, I'd be willing to somehow word that motion to say what you just did, because delay is money. The longer we push things off, we're costing money. And so I really don't want to delay this, but I would appreciate those considerations with, the option of reviewing it at that level, that those two things be in there, and if there's an issue that needs to be discussed later, we can bring it back. So how do you want me to word that? What do I need to say in this, bunch here to make a motion, Madam Clerk? Okay. All right, Mr. President, I'll make my best effort here.
Go ahead, Councilman Williams.
All right, I move that the Caldwell City Council accept the comprehensive plan analysis, findings of fact, and conclusions of law listed herein, and based on the findings of fact and conclusion of law, the mayor and city council hereby order that CMP 22-000001/ZON 22-000001, a request to modify the 2040 comprehensive plan map designation from commercial and services to manufacturing and production, and rezone a portion of parcel R 35892 containing approximately 6.72 acres from C3 service commercial to M1 light industrial, subject to a development agreement, and it would be approved with the conditions stated in discussions here and review by planning and zoning director.
All right. Are we good with that, Mr. Waterman? Is that clear enough?
So, let me just repeat, I will state what I understand the conversation should be that you were trying to include in the condition is that when the planning director review, the design review for the buildings built on this lot, that they consider all the things already listed in the staff report, in addition to those things, that they look at potentially awnings, color palette, and panel height as a way to increase the variety and improve the visual appearance of the building.
Thank you. Can you just include that, Madam Clerk?
Okay, so your motion was to incorporate the conversation.
Yes.
My articulation was what I believe the conversation to be, and you're agreeing that that is what
Yes.
you meant by the conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Waterman.
Second.
All right. Motion by Councilman Williams, second by Councilman Stotting. Will the clerk call the roll, please?
Williams,
Yes.
Register,
Yes.
Jody,
Yes.
Dottie,
Yes.
McGee,
Yes.
Thank you very much. Nope. We're there. Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it. All right, action item number 2. This is to consider bill number 6, ordinance number 3400 for case number ZON 22-000001, a request to waive the rules and pass on the first reading and approve the publication. And this is the hearing we just had. Okay. Yeah, move the 3 reading orders. I need to read it first, and then yes. Okay, bill number 6, ordinance number 3400, an ordinance determining that certain land lays within the city limits of Caldwell, of the city of Caldwell, county of Canyon, state of Idaho, and that said land should be rezoned to M1 light industrial zone, determining that said change in zoning is in the best interest of the city of Caldwell, Canyon County, Idaho, directing the city engineer and the planning and zoning director to amend said property on the official maps of the city of Caldwell, Idaho, and repealing all ordinances, resolutions, and orders or parts thereof in conflict with.
Mr. President.
Yes.
I move to waive the 3 reading process and consider bill number 6 ordinance number 3400 on the first reading by title only.
Moved by Counselor Williams, second by Counselor Doty. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, roll call. Go ahead.
Williams,
Yes.
Doty, Register, Dottie,
Yes.
McGee.
Yes.
All right. Now, the bill.
Mr. President, I move to sponsor bill number 6, ordinance number 3400, and I move for its passage by title only and approve the summary for publication.
Thank you.
Second.
Moved by Counselor Williams, seconded by Counselor Stotty. Will clerk call the roll?
Williams,
Yes.
Doty,
Yes.
McGee,
Yes.
Dottie,
Yes.
Register.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Clerk, Ms. Geyer, she makes me a cheat sheet that just works awesome, but I have a hard time keeping up sometimes. All right. Okay, action item number 3, consider resolution number 86-22 for case number CPM 22000001, comprehensive plan land use amendment for Scannell property. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Caldwell, Idaho, amending the comprehensive plan and land use map, affirming that prescribed notice and hearing requirements were met in accordance with Title 67, Chapter 65, Idaho Code, and that Caldwell City Code, and providing an effective date. All right, there is not a motion to waive the rules, yeah. So I will accept the motion to approve the resolution.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Doty, second by Councilor Shoddy. Roll call, Debbie, or, roll call, please.
Doty,
Yes.
Dottie,
Yes.
Register, McGee,
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
All right. Action item number 4, this is another quasi judicial hearing. This is case number ANN 21-000001 and TUD-21000001, a request by Don't Have a Clue LLC for the annexation, planned unit development, and preliminary plat for Enclave Subdivision, a mixed-use, single-family, multifamily commercial development with a zoning designation of HC Highway Corridor Zone on parcels R32795 and R32795010, containing 45.62 acres. The subject property is located 1,500 feet west of the intersection of Highway 55 and Midway Road on the south side of Highway 55 in Caldwell. The hearing examiner forwarded this case to recommendation of approval with conditions as listed. Ms. Root.
Thank you, Council President. Debbie Root, Senior Planner, 621 Cleveland Boulevard. As indicated, this is a 45.6 acre parcel. There's actually 2 parcels, one small parcel and then the remainder. Located adjacent to Highway 55, and to the west of this property is Canyon View Estate, and to the southwest is Peregrine Estate. So that's kind of where we're located there. This is on the eastern extent of the City of Caldwell's impact area and boundaries. It's surrounded on, well, there's 2 small properties just to the east of it that will be in the city of Caldwell, if and when they're annexed, but then it's adjacent to the city of Nampa, properties to the east, and then also the Nampa's impact area to the south. There is a proposed development for that, I think it's Middlebury Sub. To my knowledge, the city of Nampa has not approved that development. So, the property is located adjacent to R1 and C2 zoned properties. Our comprehensive plan calls this out as to be highway corridor. Highway corridor is a mixed-use zone. It encourages high-density residential development currently. So, the densities for highway corridor with residential is a minimum of 6 units per acre, up to 40 units per acre. So it's really wide open, maybe not ideal, maybe not, there wasn't a lot of multifamily development when that comprehensive plan was written and presented to the council for adoption. But with that said, this development is a planned unit development. They have met the requirements for open space, for the density of the properties. They're proposing 59 lots, 19 single-family residential lots on the west boundary adjacent to the single-family residential development Canyon View Estates on the other side of the drain. They've got 22 lots of 2 to 6-plex units and with a total of 90 units in those types of buildings. And then they have proposed an apartment lot, which is right in the center, and with 192 units in that segment of the development. They're also proposing a commercial lot for mini storage in the southeast corner. It will not take direct access to Highway 55, but it is proposed to provide, mini storage commercial development on that frontage. They have proposed a pretty significant landscaping and nice architectural wall out there on the frontage, as we requested, to kind of minimize the impact of storage units along that corridor. The hearing examiner was very unfavorable to having many storage on the corridor, but he stopped short of just denying the application. They also have proposed a segment or a bundle of commercial retail lots along the frontage. Along with those commercial retail lots, they've proposed outdoor seating and that kind of thing in their landscape plan, and that has been conditioned that those be put in there. It's my understanding that several of these segments of development may be sold to different developers, and so it's important to condition those retail lots and condition it to look like what we've been presented and expect it to look like. So the one concern, well, not only one concern, there's lots of concerns with this. Again, we've got a lot of residential development that will be pouring into Valley View School District. I believe they've had some conversation with Valley View School District, but I'll let them talk about that. The overall density for the project is 9.2 dwelling units per acre, and they could go up to 40. So to realize that they haven't just jam-packed residential development onto this site. They originally actually had a lot more single-family proposed for the site, but because the PUD ordinance restricts the number of single-family, or restricts uses that would not be allowed in the zone to 30% or less. So the storage units and the single-family residential are uses that are not allowed typically in the highway corridor zone. So they had to rethink their project and actually added to the density and modified this project quite a bit. But they retained a lot of the open space, the pathways, and some good transitional development adjacent to what was proposed and is probably still proposed in the Nampa, on the Nampa side of this development, on the southern border there. And then Nampa also has, just down the street is a multifamily development along the highway corridor there as well at Midway. They're also proposing a RV storage facility in that, on that triangular piece across the drain. Partially that was what we determined was a good use for that location because the city of Caldwell's infrastructure and services stop at that property line, and it did not make sense to force or require this developer to run sewer or try to get sewer under the drain for one lot. And so they worked with staff and we determined that they would have to include this lot in the development plan. They do have to construct Celeste from the north boundary to the south boundary, crossing the drain. And so we thought it was a good compromise to have that RV storage lot on the south side of the drain. They will have to provide water and irrigation to that side, which they can have above the canal, basically, or on the bridge in those cases, where sewer would not be nearly as easy to service that lot. There is an adjacent lot also that is still in the county, just just west of Celeste. They can be serviced from Canyon View Estates, but the engineering staff determined that it is this developer's responsibility to somehow ensure that that lot is provided services. So that was that's in the engineering memorandum for that lot. Go to the phasing plan. So the last slide. Okay. Okay, so I provided, it should look like this, so you and my old presentation, there you go. There we go. That's what we want to look at. So the phasing plan that was provided to the hearing examiner, presented at the hearing examiner hearing, indicated that in phase one, phase one would include the connection of Celeste to Highway 55. ITD, when presented with that revised phasing plan, because that was wholly different than what we'd been provided previously, ITD indicated that if they were going to make that connection, they would then have to complete all the frontage improvements, which included expansion of the culvert and bridge system that's just to the west of that. The applicant then went, our phase one will likely be started before or even completed before ITD actually starts the road improvements or has the road improvements completed on Highway 55, and so that's a significant development cost to them. It's one that, one way or the other, staff believes that they should provide an access point to Highway 55 for their development in, I would say, the first phase. And my reasoning behind that is because they propose to have phase one take access across the drain, which they have to complete that drainage as well, crossing, and run it through Canyon View Estates, which then causes traffic from the boundary of the development there at Celeste, or, you know, where it crosses the drain, I can't remember the name of that road, but into Canyon View Estates. It's 0.6 miles about is the nearest access back to lake. So they're driving through the adjacent development back to lake. And there's a couple of ways they can get there, but one's just a little bit longer than the other, but it does put those, they're proposing 19 units initially in phase one, which is not a significant amount of traffic, but it's still running it through another residential development to get out to lake, to head back to town or to Highway 55 or however they're going to get there. And I hesitate to think that that's the most appropriate way to develop this property. Celeste currently will not attach to anything in the Nampa district because that development has been hitting some roadblocks with Nampa. And so my proposal would be that they maybe consider doing, you know, phase two or a portion of phase two first and build out that access point, the east access point, which was what their initial plan was, versus not having an access out to Highway 55 to avoid doing frontage improvements or have, and legitimate so, because they may have to then rip them out and redo them at, you know, when ITD does come through, but that, I would just like council to consider those things when they're looking at this development. With that, I will stand for questions.
Any questions from this room? Councilor Billy.
So, the recommendations that you just made, are those included in this proposal or separate?
So all the things that are causing concern, like they should do phase two before phase one.
What does this proposal recommend?
They do phase one first, that you would prefer phase two, or I'm just a little confused on
Okay.
whether or not you guys support this.
Thank you. So I was provided this phasing plan, it may have came in last week when I was on vacation, but, so this is a new phasing plan that is not part of the staff report. Okay. So, and I expected them to change the phasing plan because of the, you know, high cost of developing the Celeste intersection and road frontage ahead of ITD doing that with their project, okay? So I expected a phasing plan change, actually encouraged them to look at that. The city of Caldwell has purchased the pipe and things for the drainage crossing and is prepared to allow this developer to utilize that, those pipes and things, what's been proposed for, or purchased already for that drainage crossing that the city's not gonna get completed as planned in their proposals. So, so that leaves, you know, it would put about 19 homes crossing that drain and running through the subdivision. The scenario is that the phasing plans change frequently. They could come back and say, oh, well, we want to only develop the south half of phase two and run all those units through the adjacent development to the west because we don't want to, we're still ahead of ITD and we don't want to build out the road frontage and that intersection to have an access point for, onto Highway 55. Those are the scenarios that we see and can see. So this phasing plan is not currently the phasing plan that's proposed in the staff report. Staff is not favorable of not providing an access to Highway 55. I don't care which one they do, but I think that there should be an access provided to Highway 55, or if not, that this council restrict the number of units that can be built or even permitted until an access point to Highway 55 is available. That's where I'm at with this.
Did that answer your question? I understand where she stands. Okay.
Mr. President,
Sorry.
Mr. Root, this development is in the area of, Napa Christian High School, is it not?
It is.
And, let's see, the road that goes past there is, Flamingo and Middleton? Or is it Midway?
Midway is out there, yep.
Okay. And there's a large, apartment development right now on Middleton there, on the, Karcher Road and Middleton corner, right? By the, not the Nazarene Church, but, west of the Nazarene Church there, a mile, I think it is.
Yeah, that's a multi-family development.
Does that belong to us there too then, or is that Napa's?
That's Nampa's.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So is there gonna be any, exit onto Orchard at all from this development, or is it gonna be all 55 and Midway?
Will not be onto Orchard from this development. So this development will connect to Nampa. So depending upon what happens with Middlebury subdivision, there may eventually be connections through. The connection of Celeste, which is the collector roadway, is the collector roadway for both the city of Caldwell and the city of Nampa. So the two cities have corresponded regarding that. They want that road connection to be completed. There was in one of the proposals, there was a stub road, further to the east in the Enclave development, and Nampa did not want that road to go through, and so that was removed. So that Celeste is the connection point. The roads that stub to the east actually stub to the two small properties that will be in the city of Caldwell when they are annexed. And so they're required to stub into those properties. There may be a reason at that point to go ahead and connect to the stub road that's in the Nampa development, but currently that's not foreseen at this moment, but it will depend on what's proposed on that currently, the NL parcel there adjacent to the Enclave property.
Okay. Now, is Canyon View subdivision the one they blocked off as far as exit to 55? Is that, am I looking at that right?
Yes, you are looking at that correct.
Okay.
There is no access there. There's an emergency access into it for fire trucks, but no access out.
Because like say traveling 55 quite often, because I don't live too far off of there, again, the traffic is backed up from Middleton all the way back to Lake, a lot of times from 7 in the morning till 8:30, 9 o'clock, so. And then, of course, in the afternoons too, when everybody gets off of work, so I don't know, we're gonna have to really look at this. Thank you.
Mr. Ortman, yeah.
Council President, thank you. Councilman Static, there is a project planned by Idaho Transportation Department to widen Highway 55. I've been trying to find it in my notes. That was planned for 2026, and it has been, as I understand, accelerated. So it'll be happening sooner. And Deb, if you know off the top, I can't find it right now.
Well, I've been told 2024, so.
Step up.
Well, I've been going to those meetings for the last 5 years and nothing has been done yet, so I don't know, I just don't believe those folks anymore, but that's fine. Thank you.
Yeah, I think they'll eventually get to it.
Yeah.
Eventual is the challenge.
Mr. President, I have several questions on this route, and I appreciate this development in so many ways, and there's a lot I like about it, but even the problem with Celeste, and that is a closed development with that as the only egress point. And when it's busy on Highway 55, it's already a nightmare for the residents of Celeste to get in or out. And I noticed Mr. Eggleston asked that question as well, and there didn't seem to be an answer given. What hope do we have of any kind of traffic mitigation for that intersection if we approve this? And I've got a couple other questions for you.
Well, what hope do we have, right? You know, those intersections are planned to be improved. At Celeste, that will be a right-in, right-out only, you know, they can only travel one direction out of there at Celeste. The intersection to the east on the Enclave, will initially be a left-in, right-in, right-out. And they'll have to put in a turn lane and do those improvements. Again, there's a reason why they are proposing to put off those connections, you know, so there's lots of improvements that have to be made one way or the other. And if they make them ahead of ITV doing it, it's kind of, you know, it provides for access to their property, but then it has to be redone at some point. And so, you know, there's challenges to this development. It is a good development. We realize that there's a lot of traffic concerns all over this valley, and when we're kind of subject to ITD's schedule, it's maybe we need to yell a little louder to get pulled up on the tip and get our projects in front of them instead of them making a lot of improvements in Ada County. So, you know, that's kind of where that is, but, keep in mind as well that these, even if they started with these 19 units, it's a good 2 years before that final plat even comes to council. So the construction drawings have to get done, the bridge crossing has to be installed, and the drain. There's, you know, so you're really looking at 2 to 5 year build on even the first phase of this, and development's a concern, you know, as everything sits today, but realize that what you approve today doesn't get built tomorrow. It gets built a minimum of probably 2 years out with a more look at a, you know, actual homes being built anywhere from 3 to 5 years.
Thank you. My next question probably shouldn't come as a surprise, but Mr. Eggleston had it as well, being that this is a gateway road, he called it. It's the same concern with the storage unit right there. This is the first, you've just entered into the city of Caldwell, and what is that gonna look like? Is it going to look like a barrier or a fortress, or do we even have an elevation for this project to even consider so we could suggest awnings? I don't know.
There is, and I actually, I know that the applicant has a presentation that they're intending to present. In your staff report, they're in the landscape, in the project narrative, they've included the fence elevations and some, elevations of what their, roadway and, you know, frontages look like. They've, on Enclave Avenue, they've also proposed detached sidewalks, which further opens up that and kind of things. There's a 30-foot buffer, landscape buffer required by our ordinance, so they've got to, not only are they, at this project, so another thing that's happening with ITD, at this project in particular location, the road is actually shifting an additional 85 feet into their property. So they're, that was part of why there was a whole redesign. This has been in process for over a year at this point. And there was a whole redesign because the ITD right-of-way that has to be provided for this project shifted way into the project. And so there was a lot of, adjustment of this, and, they were indicated by staff from the beginning that, storage units weren't our, primary, desire on Highway 55 and at this location. That if they were going to propose, storage units there, that they need to really beef up the look and feel of what that looks like on the fence line. They've provided for a stone and architectural fence that does have appealing look to it. The landscaping will be appealing. We have to be a little careful about what ITD will and won't allow when we're with our landscaping, but that 30-foot buffer is outside of the right-of-way, plus they have then the sidewalk that'll be there. And then having the detached sidewalks on both Enclave and Celeste Avenue further open up the visual appearance of that. The commercial structures that are proposed there, the commercial retail structures, have a pretty decent design with open space, in them, and so it gives some look and feel to the development that we believe provides for nice amenities. But keep in mind that that's phase 5, so road frontage improvements, landscaping improvements all along there won't be done for quite a few years unless this council said, nope, you're gonna do your landscaping right up front.
And then finally, if I could just comment, I don't think there's anything you can say, but again, Valley View School District obviously is not in favor of this. They stated in this particular instance that the Lakeview Elementary School can accommodate 725 students, and they already have 856. In addition to that, we received a 2-page letter from Valley View that's included in our packet expressing this concern, and I hear what you're saying, this is 2 to 5 years down the road, but until we build more schools, it doesn't matter how far down the road it is, if we don't solve this problem, and I really don't have a solution. Maybe I'm just making a comment now, not asking for a statement from you, because I realize this is out of your power and authority to build schools, but
Right.
This is an issue for me.
A representative from Valley View School District is here tonight, and again, they have been in contact, the applicant has been in contact with them, so I'll let Mr. Palmer speak to that more. You are correct. The schools, we have an issue, just like with the workshop earlier, we have an issue with fire stations, and all of them in these areas, in these general vicinities, and so it's a concern. The roads are a concern, fire stations are a concern, the schools are definitely a concern. They're a concern to the taxpayers and just people in general that live and travel in the area. But, again, it is a good mixed-use development that meets the requirements of the zone. But you're welcome to do with that what you will.
Thank you, Ms. Root. Thank you so much.
Ms. Root, I had couple of questions, actually. Usually on a PUD, it's a single owner project.
It is.
But you said this was likely not to be?
Well, so the ordinance, even though it says it must be under single ownership, then further goes on to say that as long as the purchasing entity signs off that they've read the development agreement, they're in agreement with the conditions and all of that, that the property can be sold in pieces, in part or a whole.
So once it's approved, it can be split between ownership? Okay. And then just to clarify, just following up on Councilor Doty's question, by the time X number of houses are built, you would recommend access to Highway 55 and Lake? Both accesses be completed, am I understanding that right?
Okay, so there's not direct access to Lake currently, right? They have to go through Canyon View Subdivision to get to Lake, right? So what that would be, typically, And, you know, the fire district isn't here, but they cap that at 30 before a secondary access is required. So, in this particular development, there are 19 single-family residential units proposed in phase one. And so you could potentially cap it at that. You must provide a second access or an access to, a direct access to Highway 55 prior to submitting for phase two or for additional units beyond the 19 or beyond the 30 or whatever it might be. And I indicate that because, most developers come back in and change their phasing plans. And they change it in favor of themselves, right? For whatever development is happening. And so you could easily see one of these other phases leapfrog the other and still not have access to Highway 55.
Gotcha, thank you.
Okay?
Mr. President?
Yeah.
Mr. Palmer isn't here, is
He
he?
is.
Where's he at? Oh, okay. I have a question for you. Joey, you wanna come up?
Oh, we're out of
We
order.
can't go out of order.
Okay, oh, okay, all right. Sure.
All right,
Are you done
any
with
questions?
me?
Yes. Are we done with Ms. Root? Okay, thank you, Ms. Root. I have Joseph Palmer's next on the list. Now, Mr. Palmer, you're signed up in favor, is that correct?
Mr. President?
Yeah.
The next person to present would be the applicant, in this case.
What's the applicant's name?
I'm not certain.
Alex?
Yeah, I'll get roll up.
Oh, so you're third on the list, okay.
I got it behind them, sorry.
Okay. Thank you, okay, so well, thank you, Mr. Waterman.
And then was there a presentation? Oh, perfect. Okay, I'm Alex 332 North Broadmoor Way, Nampa, Idaho. I'm representing the developer of Enclave Subdivision. I'll be joined in my presentation tonight by Jamie Snyder. She'll do the second half of the presentation, I'll do the first half of the presentation. I'd first like to thank Deb for her time getting us here to the project tonight, and then for the City Council for your time and space for our hearing. Next slide, please. So Enclave Subdivision is our integrated mixed-use project with an array of residential and commercial uses, along with connected pathways and amenities for its residents. Our uses do complement the surrounding land uses, as Deb has noted, and our proposed annexation of highway corridor zoning matches the intent of the comprehensive plan. Next slide, please. So here's some of our points we've discussed since the hearing examiner, some items that we've wanted to iron out and want to provide clarity for City of Caldwell and also for future homeowners here. So with the preliminary plat, our initial pre-plat had a 65-foot right-of-way for Celeste. We have provided the 70-foot as required by city with a right-hand turn lane at Karcher as you go northbound there. We have provided a detailed phasing plan, and I'll discuss that further in a future slide on our phasing plan. We've addressed the value capacity concerns as a developer and as a representative of the developers, especially in Caldwell and our school districts here. We felt the need to engage with those school districts and find a solution and not continually exacerbate current issues with them. So we have Mr. Palmer here with us to discuss that. And the developers to mitigate with a donation fee per door, and that's, as of now, $500 per door. And Mr. Palmer will discuss that further as well. We have also reviewed and limited our commercial uses for those commercial pads, those 5 along Karcher there. We have coordinated and finalized that with P&Z staff, and we're happy to X out some of those uses as those aren't uses that we envisioned for our site. And then as conditioned by the hearing examiner, we have provided design guidelines, and this has provided a baseline standard for the project's architectural design of all the proposed uses. So even if there's a change of hands of owners down the road, it will maintain that architectural design aesthetic throughout the process, while also creating a little flexibility for builders if they want to accent a door with a certain color, things like that. we're agreeable to all other conditions as shown in the staff report. Next slide, please. So this is our phasing plan. So like Deb noted, phase one is that single-family residential within 19 homes, and then phase two is those 2 to 6 plex units, which is 90 units in total. We are happy to maybe combine those two phases to at least get that access to Karcher, as that is a concern. We were just trying to limit how much for frontage on Karcher was going to happen. That's a big framing of our phasing here, was to limit that until the widening project was completed, because ITD, as noted, said they really wanted us to limit how much we have there, because they might come through and rip it out again and redo things, and that's just a wasted taxpayer dollars down the road, and they wanted to limit us to that. So we are amenable to possibly combining phase one or two, or flipping them if need be, because we do understand concerns. And then phase three would include the apartments for those residential units, completing internal circulation there for the site while maintaining access on the east side to Karcher. And then phase four is our storage units, and these are to be, phase 3, 4, and 5 will likely be constructed after that widening project. TO Engineers is working with ITD on that widening project. They have told us 2024, but you do know with ITD, things do change, and we've experienced that with this own site, as we've gone through many iterations and back and forth with ITD, because their design is changing. It's a little more concrete now, so hopefully it doesn't change anytime soon, but from our understanding, it's going to start in 2024. So again, that's why we're limiting that frontage there. And then, next slide, please. This is our overall site plan of Enclave Subdivision. Again, it's an amazing project that we're presenting to the city. It's actually integrating a lot of different residential uses and some commercial on site. Our single-family residential, as Deb has noted, does complement the Canyon View Estates to the west, while it maintains that original where we had, I think it was 90 single-family units at one point, and we downsized a lot, but still maintain that transition from a lower density to higher density as we move west to east from Canyon View Estates. And our plex units are complementary to Middlebury North. That development to the south in Nampa is actually going to City Council there for tonight for approval. So we'll see how that goes. And but we designed to best complement that land use, and then to the east as well to the Brownstone Estates, those apartments. So those are the intention of the plex units. Commercial and storage are best uses along highway frontage. It's going to be allowed, a lot of traffic. So we thought this would be a nice visual and sound buffer. But also for those people with the plex units or apartments, a space for the storage. And also concerns maybe with queuing for traffic onto Karcher from Enclave, that eastern approach. There's not a lot of users for storage, so that we won't have to worry about long lines of cars backed up there and trying to get in and out to the storage units versus an apartment or commercial use. And their apartments are the anchor of the site, and we're surrounded by those complementary uses, functionally integrate them into the site. And with that, we have those design guidelines, landscaping, and other elements to maintain the quality and vision of our project, and Jamie will elaborate more on those. So I stand for any questions, unless more effective to take my questions after Jamie's done with her portion of the presentation.
If it's all right with you guys, we'll hear the other half of the presentation, and we'll know which questions we want to ask. I think that'll work great.
Works for me.
Good evening, I'm Jamie Snyder, TO Engineer, Landscape Architect on the project, 332 North Broadmoor Way in Nampa, Idaho. If we go back one slide, please. So thanks to Alex, he gave a good introduction of the site plan already, but just wanted to go through it real quickly and talk about our amenity package and landscaping. So since our meeting with the hearing examiner, our primary features of the landscape plan and amenity package as a whole have remained fully intact. We are still offering the addition to Caldwell irrigation drain pathway system through our portion of construction of the Wilson Drain Greenbelt. We still offer a mix of residential product types from multifamily to the 4 to 6 plex units to the single-family homes. We still offer a highly walkable neighborhood connected through our detached sidewalk system
on our collector roadways, as well as internal pathways, both micro and major. We offer 2 separate and complete amenity packages for the 6-plex units and single-family homes, and then a separate package for the multifamily units. For the 4 to 6-plex and single-family homes, the amenity package consists of tot lot, pickleball court, half basketball court, fitness stations, and picnic shelter under a shade sail. The multifamily units are exclusive amenity package, include the pool and clubhouse, its own tot lot, picnic shelter, bocce ball courts, ample open space. There's 2 50 by 100 play fields there in the lawn, and there's also a dog-specific area surrounded by a wrought iron fence. We also still offer our 2 natural play areas that we've designed within our storm retention zones. We know these can't be counted towards usable open space or qualifying open space, but we have designed these to be usable for play and exploration areas for the community, knowing that they are going to be focal points in prominent locations. So these would be nature play and able to be flooded if needed, and when they're dry, full of log rounds, etc., for exploration. As Alex said, to ensure our community image gets followed through during construction, in all of our architectural features and our landscape design, we've created a set of architectural guidelines to be used to evaluate each structure prior to construction. Although all these things are made the same, we did make some significant changes to our presence along Karcher Road, and going over the conditions for the site and listening to the hearing examiner's concerns, we realized that this was not only frontage for our community, but frontage for the entire city of Caldwell. Its close proximity to Nampa makes this a true gateway corridor property, and we realize that. We hope the following design changes we've made to our landscape makes this a development the city can be proud of. Next slide, please. So this shows the frontage of the self-storage that we are proposing. This would be, approaching our site from the east. We've heard how important it is that our self-storage area be subdued in its presence, and not visually call out that this is indeed a self-storage unit. You can see on these renderings, we've enlarged the planter bed along the foundation of the wall. This architectural wall has also been called out with vertical accents, stone columns, accented with green or evergreen plant material that will provide screening year-round. The wall itself, it's our vision that this is designed in such a way that vehicular and pedestrian traffic won't so much notice. This is a storage facility. We've added opportunities to add a variety of materials on the wall that could include stone veneer columns and a mix of metal, concrete, or stucco to make the wall visually appealing and add a pedestrian interest. At the corner of Enclave Way and Karcher, you can see kind of on the right-hand side and in the top picture there, we have planned for an anchor building to hold the corner and provide some additional height variation along that frontage. We envision this building to include some architectural features such as stone cladding and street-side windows to give it pedestrian scale. Next slide, please. Continuing west into our commercial core, we worked really hard to redesign this portion of our Karcher landscape to ensure that it was engaging, inviting, and provided a free-flowing connection to the sidewalk and the plazas beyond. In doing this transformation, we moved the shrubs that we previously had running adjacent to the Karcher sidewalk and put them up against the foundation of the building to help soften the elevation. We also used large swaths of lawn to draw neighbors in, both with their eye and walkable connection from the sidewalk into the plazas, where friends and neighbors can gather together to eat and drink in the proposed outdoor plazas. It's our hope that these intentional design features capture the interest of the passersby and give them a glimpse of the friendly vibe we're trying to create in this community that we know is the spirit here in Caldwell. And with that, I'll stand with Alex with any questions.
All right, thank you. Questions? same one, Mr. President. Go ahead, Mr. Tony.
What is the height of the fence around the storage unit? So meaning, you show the new building that's gonna be higher than the fence that's there. And I believe you said that the goal is that people wouldn't be able to see those storage units behind there, but if they're higher than the fence, then we have an issue with people being able to see the facility.
Correct. So the height of that fence, I believe, is about 12 feet high. So it's the intention that that would be the top of the storage unit behind it. So essentially, that roof of the unit behind it would not be seen over the height of the wall.
Mr. President, I just wanted to make a comment. I was glad to see TO Engineering's on this project, because in another life, I've done some work with you folks, and you do a great job, and it eases my mind a little bit that you folks are the engineer on this project instead of some out-of-state or out-of-town engineering outfit, so I'm really satisfied with that, so thank you very much.
Yeah. I noticed in the material that in your commercial area, your buildings are facing into the new subdivision. So on the road side of your commercial development, is there a wall between that, or are you just gonna see the back of the commercial, or what will you see from Karcher looking at your commercial?
Correct. So it will be the back side. So you're right, the entrance is going to be on the internal portion of the development. So the back side, there won't be a visitor entry, I guess, from the back side. They will just have like possibly a service door off the back. But you can see through the renderings, it's our intention to have that be an engaging facade. So, awnings and different materials and things. So it's not our intention, it looks like the backside of the building. But
there's some kind of, the only reference I have is along State Street in Eagle, there's a whole commercial subdivision, and you just see the backs of the building, and they have like State Farm or whatever stuff in the back of that building. Is that kind of a similar idea of what you're thinking, or I don't know. I'm just trying to see when you're driving down Karcher Road looking at your commercial, what the passerby would be seeing is what I'm trying to envision.
Right. So I know exactly where you're talking about, down there. And to me, the back of those buildings are very sleepy, right? There's no activity on the back side of those buildings.
Exactly, yes.
It's our intention that this is gonna be an active space. And what we actually were looking at when we modeled this is, if you can think of, the intersection of, I believe it's Chinden and Linder. They've got some things there in the Fred Meyer kind of parking lot that holds the corner. Can't remember, it's a new pub, and I only know this because when my kids go there, the Cookie Cutters Hair Salon. But the back side of those buildings sit up against Linder, and they have the vegetation back there and the different facade, elevations on that. So that's kind of what we're trying to model here, an active space, not something that you clearly just need to come around.
Yeah, your interpretation of the one in Eagle is, in my opinion, accurate. It's just kind of, there's just nothing there to be.
We're not engaging, and that was one of the things we considered when we redid this landscape. Before, our previous application had kind of a shrub buffer all the way along the interior side of that sidewalk, and so we took that away and grouped the shrubs, and then did these swath pathways, kind of leading your eye into these open plazas. So as you drive or walk down Karcher, you can see the activity in there and know, like, hey, there's something going on in there, and I want to be a part of that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President?
Yes, sir.
I want to appreciate the work that's gone into this. And I think it's a fantastic development, and I'm glad to see something so diverse in there. Would you clarify for me, though, I believe you stated, even though it'd be a tremendous expense, you're willing to consider 1 and 2 and the double entrance onto Karcher Road, phase 1 and phase 2, so that you have 2 ingress points?
Let me specify that. My intention was to at least have that one ingress on the eastern approach there for those 2 phases, to minimize, because we were holding off on that Celeste intersection, until after the widening project on the western side, due to all those infrastructural needs that Deb pointed out. Because essentially, if we do those improvements, ITD might just come through and undo them, essentially. So we're trying to limit unburden costs on the site. So it's been kind of a struggle, especially with dealing with ITD, going back and forth with our phasing and how to make this work while this is going to be widened eventually down the road. So that's kind of why we came with this initial phasing plan. But we heard your concerns, maybe at least having access to Karcher on that eastern side there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Further questions? Thank you guys very much, appreciate it. Now Joseph Palmer.
Thank you, council members. Joey Palmer, also known as Joseph Palmer, 16131 Lures Way, Caldwell, Idaho, 83607, representing the Valley View School District. It's really hard to sign up in favor for any growth within our community, but I did, and on behalf of the Valley View School District. And what that actually represents is that we are in favor of responsible growth in which developers actually partner with the Valley View School District without a state statute in place, a city ordinance in place, or any kind of threat or mandate in place. They were doing a partnership with the Valley View School District because it's the right thing to do. Part of our meeting, our conversation went with them asking, so if we do not give any kind of partnership or donation to the school district, does that mean our development may not pass? And they understood, and I shared, absolutely not. That means you're just doing what's right because it's the right thing to do. You are under no obligation to do this. And they didn't blink an eye, and they still said, well, we want to partner with you in a tangible way. And that's why I'm here actually to testify in person. And specifically because there's many developers that come here and they will tell you, yes, we did meet with the Valley View School District, and they will tell you nothing new that we didn't already tell you in a letter, and still they are approved without any tangible partnership with the Valley View School District. So really, it's a check of the box. So I'm not here testifying to the city council, demonstrating to you an outstanding partnership that is unfortunately rare, but hopefully that trajectory is going to change. And so I would just like to, on behalf of the Valley View School District, publicly to thank, I believe it's Don't Have a Clue, LLC. And then also, City Council Member Williams, you referenced the letter that Valley View sent. I'd also like to share a little bit more stats on that. And the letter that was sent in March, and I shared that we have a capacity of 725 students for Lakeview. At that time, the enrollment was 856 students. At the end of last week, on Friday, I checked the enrollment for Lakeview Elementary. It went from 856 students to 873 students. That's growth in less than a month, City Council members. So although I appreciate Deb Root's comment that, just because something's going to be approved doesn't mean it's going to be, bam, there's the homes right away, now we have to find a school for them. It's the same thing with schools though. When the bond fell in March, we were hoping that it would pass, and we had an understanding that the 2 elementary schools would open in the fall of 2024. Well, now our construction company is telling us that if it passes as soon as possible, sometime this year, we haven't decided when we're going to try and bond again, it wouldn't open until the fall of 2025. So although developments are getting passed, and it's going to take multiple years for those to be developed, it's the same thing with schools. So let's say, best case scenario, that we do pass a bond this year. That means we have to wait 3 years with 6 schools out of our 7 elementary schools way over capacity, to the point where it's not just the building that's over the capacity, it's the portable buildings that we put on our campuses to absorb the growth that are also over capacity. So that's why I'm here, to not only give you an accurate pulse on how this growth is impacting the Valley View School District, but also to show what an outstanding partnership can look like. This money that's going to be donated to the Valley View School District can be saved. It's not going to solve the elementary problem right now, but it can be saved so that way we can purchase land for 60 acres to build a high school in the future. And we are looking at a projected date of about 5 years of needing a high school. And so if we can continue partnerships like this with developers, then we can save a significant amount of money to purchase that land. Because even if there was land available today, 60 acres, Valley View could not buy it. We have no room, space, money at this point to do anything right by our high school as well. So although elementary schools are immediate, I'm going to say crisis, because it is a crisis. I'm not just trying to be an alarmist. It is that, that's what it is. We also want to make sure that we are not in the same predicament in 5 years when we need to build a third high school for the Valley School District. Okay, at that point, I think I'll just stand for questions.
Thank you. Question, Mr. Palmer.
Mr. President.
Why did I know it would be?
I noticed in the, presentation that $500 a door, is that correct?
Yes.
And mitigation, previous to that word, what does that mean, mitigation? Is that something that you approved already, or do you both parties have approved, or is it still up in the air yet?
Yeah, it's hard to say approve or a fee or anything like that, because our partnership is strictly honor-based, you know, there's nothing like that going on. So when I say mitigate, I talk about mitigating the cost that it's going to cost the Valley View School District to be able to respond to the growth.
Is it a reasonable price in your opinion right now, or, I know we'd always like to have more, but I mean.
Sure, that's an interesting question too, because the reality is they're giving 1,000% more than they're obligated to, right?
Yeah.
So they can give us $0 and they would still be able to do what they need to do. He did, Brady, who is the owner, I believe?
Yes.
Correct, of Don't Have a Clue LLC, shared his rationale for $500 per door, which is when he looked at the impact fees at the Meridian City, it was about, you're gonna have to help me, Brady, I think it was $200-something for the police and over $500 for fire?
About 200 for police, about 600 for fire.
Right, so he came to just a round number, kind of averaging between those two impact fees, and thought $500 would be a good landing spot per door for the Valley View School District.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the only other comment, you know, rest of the council members, I just hope that, we can use this good example of cooperation as leverage for future developments that we know are going to be a detriment to the Valley School District unless they can pass some bonds and everything. And passing bonds, you know how I feel about that. I'm bond poor right now in Valley View, so I like to see this type of cooperation. Hope it continues, and with the new subdivisions coming on, let's keep this in mind.
And you're not alone in that, Councilman Stoddard, because I ran the campaign, the information campaign for the Valley View School District, and most of the feedback that would come to us from people who were actually pro-bond was, gosh dang it, when are developers going to have something to do with this as well? And so that's why most people voted no, and that's the major concern for most people who even voted yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
I don't want to throw anybody under the bus here.
Sure.
But, is the city of Nampa having a, open ear to this as well? I mean, cause they're, I mean, them and us are in unison on how much is building here, so.
Right.
Have you had similar discussions with the city of Nampa?
Yeah, great question. So on this subdivision plan that you see right here, if you just go down a little bit, Deb Root talked about Middlebury development. They're meeting at the Nampa City Council as well. I'm only one man who hardly knows what he's doing when it comes to this kind of conversation. And I can't be at two places at once. We have to talk about Nampa, we have to talk about Caldwell, and we also have to talk about Canyon County. And we don't have a job description for anybody in the district office that help facilitate these kind of conversations. So I just took it up and I said I'm going for it. So to answer your question, yeah, specifically this lunch, at lunch today, I met with Councilwoman Natalie Jangula for the Nampa City Council. And then also on Wednesday morning, I'll be meeting with another council member from Nampa, along with, I can't remember specifically who, but representatives from their planning and zoning department as well. And we've had previous conversations with them. I met with the mayor, and I continue to reach out to council members and commissioners to have this conversation as well. And we're not exactly anti-growth. We know that there's a housing crisis. We know that we need more employees coming into the valley. We completely understand the predicament. But we do have to make sure that Valley View's heard as well.
Thank you,
We appreciate it.
Mr. President.
Yes,
So I just want to be clear, you're,
Sure.
you're in crisis at the elementary schools, but you're in favor of this development, is that right?
I'm specifically in favor of partnerships, because if you're gonna approve growth no matter what, I need to be in favor and demonstrate and model for city councils what responsible growth can look like. Because most people are saying, well, gee, I don't know what to do, it's good. No, we have to do something regardless, if it's written in so-called law or not, we need to do something. So that's what I'm in favor of. Thanks for the clarifying question.
Mr. President, just one more. Joy, if you would comment on what this other, developer did for you folks from Napa, the one that donated land.
Oh, okay, that's still in the works. It's a major developer. I'm probably not comfortable saying who that is right now. We met a month ago, and then we were gonna meet, Thursday morning as well. The understanding from the previous meeting was that, the owner is going to look at potential solutions, whether that's donating, trading, giving us a discount. Discount doesn't help us because we don't have money to purchase land right now anyways, or donate money as well. So I'd be happy to follow up on what the conclusion to that conversation is by the end of this week.
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right, Colin Gomar?
Colin Ronhar, TO Engineers, 332 North Broadmoor Way. I'm just, engineer for TO Engineers, but wanted to get up here, maybe ease some concerns or just clarify a few things. We submitted this project January of 2021, and back and forth with the staff to ITD. It's actually granted us a unique opportunity to make different iterations. The different play areas that Jamie talked about, they're unique. The different layouts, the different phasing plan. I did want to clarify that the phasing plan wasn't something that the owner and the applicant and TO Engineers just threw out as a new change. That was requested by Hearing Examiner Eggleston for a detailed phasing plan. The phases did change, and those are obviously, like we've talked before, there's intricacies to all this phasing. The concern about Highway 55 is traffic, obviously. ITD will not allow 2 accesses until expansion is done. So we have to pick one or the other if we're going to do one. If we shifted the access point to the east, like it was before, and included a portion of Phase 2 in Phase 1 or all of Phase 2 in Phase 1, there would have to be a secondary access, like Ted mentioned, because it's over 30 units. So the secondary access would most likely connect to Canyon View regardless, but there would be maybe an access point at 55, if that makes sense at all. The applicant is willing to condition a certain amount of units to make the connection to 55, whether that's by phase, by unit. The hope was that restricting that 19 out to Lake and Canyon View would be the minimum impact for now. And then, like we talked about before, that would most likely push us, hopefully, to ITD expansion, and we'd allow those 2 access points on 55. So I wanted to clarify that allowance by ITD will not allow those 2 access points to 55 until their expansion is done. That phasing plan was conditioned by Eggleston to be provided before this council meeting today. We provided that to staff on April 19th. The access points on 55 are unique in themselves. There's going to be I have a letter from, I think the letter is in the staff report, but it details out temporary signalization until both of them are in. The last one will always be a right-in, right-out, so there will be infrastructure in the left to prohibit traffic movement, and so forth. We are dedicating nearly 120 feet on our side. That was kind of outlined by Deb. They're shifting Karcher completely on to this portion of the property. So the faces of those commercial buildings will be about 150 feet off of what the existing Karcher center line is. So they're quite a ways down there, if you can visualize that. And then we hoped that those design review guidelines, those were conditioned by hearing examiner Eggleston as well. Those would, make sure that if portions of this project are sold off, that the standards are kept high. Brady lives in the area, he works in the area, this is not a cash smash and grab in California or anywhere else. There's no desire to be sneaky or to make a bad development. The intention is to make a great development, bring a high standard of living to Caldwell, a high standard of quality, and with that, we're open to conditions of access points or anything like that. But with that, I'll send any engineering questions you may have.
So if I understand it right, there's two accesses indicated on departure.
Correct.
And you guys are okay with either one initially, one or the other?
The applicant would prefer the east access first. The west access, there's a drain, that drain crosses Karcher currently, the Wilson, I believe it is, that comes up north there. That thing's really deep, it's about 20 feet or so deep down in there. The expansion of that bridge would be an exorbitant amount of cost, to expand that to do a right-hand turn lane. So why that would have to be expanded is you'd have to have a decel lane coming east on Karcher Road. To get into development, you'd have to have a decel lane to turn right into the development. That would, basically require the whole bridge to be expanded, and that's an exorbitant amount of cost. That's going to be done in ITD, and even if we were to go out and do it today, they're going to take it out and do it further, because they're taking the right of way even further.
So when you exceed 30 homes, you would have, if I'm understanding what you're talking about, you would have the east entrance on Karcher and the bridge across the drain going into the other subdivision.
To Canyon View, correct.
Okay.
I guess I can't do it. There's option of making a temporary emergency access if that was needed, but how I see it right now is that if Highway 55 connection was conditioned, there would have to be a secondary access because we'd exceed that 30. Right. And the easiest way to do that would be to take that access to Canyon View.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you. Grant Brookover, it says you're here, but you don't desire to speak at this point?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, I have, no one to testify in neutral, and in, opposition, I have Diane Regis.
Sorry, I'm sure. My name is Diane Regis. I live at 12402 Karcher Road, Nampa, Idaho, 83651. I live directly across from this, development. I live in a home that used to be known as the Robert LeBeau House. It's 100 years old. I have been working with ITD since they first got started. I have been told so far that when the road comes my direction, they will be 50 feet from my front door. I will lose all of my front area. Right now, as you probably know, traffic is real interesting. It is bumper-to-bumper traffic in the mornings going from west to east, and in the evening from somewhere about 3 or 4 in the afternoon until 6 or 7 at night. And Middleton to Lake is usually bumper-to-bumper. I can't discount that the development looks beautiful, and it looks like it'd be great. My biggest concern is just the fact of the way that it's, the phases that are going in, and for all of that traffic to come out on Highway 55. Even with the widening of the road, I still think there's going to be issues with the number of developments that are coming into the area. I know of 2 other developments that are surrounding me with apartment buildings and homes. that are in the beginning processes. I think that we really need to seriously look at the way that it's phased in. If I lived in the subdivision on the west side, and owned a home there, I don't know that I would be really excited about allowing, traffic from another subdivision to come by my house. You know, and I don't know, maybe there's some other option, but that's where I stand. Like I said, I think it's a beautiful subdivision. Did anybody think about possibly making it a retirement area instead of children? Just something to throw out there. There are no, retirement areas within the Canyon County area that I know of that are to any degree. And that would be a beautiful way to use those services, and you wouldn't have as many traffic vehicles, nor would you have as many children. Thank you.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Thank you, ma'am, appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, that is all I have that are signed up to speak. Does any of the council have any questions for anybody that has spoke, or does anybody from TO Engineers want to come up and restate anything?
Hi again. So I'd like to address Diane's comment really quick about traffic concerns. Again, with ITD, they do control a lot with our access, as you may know. So we are pretty stuck on where those access points are. There's a big study that goes into that, traffic counts. It's a long-term study. It takes about 6 months to do a traffic impact study. So they took a hard look at that, and they've also had a chance to kind of look at our plans and kind of dictated where this X amount of traffic will flow this direction at this approach. And I understand her concerns. It's hard with our growth and the speed of our growth here, and we don't have the infrastructure necessarily here yet, but it's coming to mitigate those. I remember driving down Cartram when I first started driving 10 years ago, and there was maybe one light at 10. Maybe, I don't even think Lake was in at that point. So I understand those concerns, and myself as a land use planner in the private sector, my voice comes in where I want to support those, but it's hard to see some things like that go, but that's also part of growth and growing our economy in Idaho, unfortunately. So I wanted to make a statement to that. And also, we just got a note from the head planner, Christy Watkins at City Nampa, that Middlebury North has just been approved. So that helps with the access down south to Celeste, helps our case, it helps their case as well, because I know they were having some issues with that as well in Nampa. So I think they saw there's some hand-in-hand going, and we kind of needed one to have the other, and it was just a matter of timing for those. So that'll help. I believe the development will bring Celeste to the south to Flamingo, and then cut you over to Midway. So there'll be two collectors to further better our access and their access, and better transportation improvements down the road. And then one other item is that access. We've been hitting this a lot, and there's one more point we wanted to bring up. We want to stick that east approach as well, because we do need those turn lanes for a left in and a right in, and we have more control of getting that right away for those turn lanes versus to the west. We need that decel lane, but a lot of it comes off of our property, and we don't have any control over that right away. So it's another barrier, again, why we didn't choose Celeste. Initially, we chose that eastern approach, Celeste, or Enclave Avenue. And I'll stand for any additional questions.
Any questions?
Mr. President, when you talked about right-hand turn only, will there be an extra lane for the right-hand turn, or is this gonna be part of that 5-lane project they've got planned, or 6, whatever it is?
Yeah, are you talking on Karcher?
Yeah.
Turn lane?
Yeah.
I believe there is, plans for a turn lane, right-hand turn.
So it won't be part of the regular flow of traffic then, they can?
Yeah, it'll come off traffic and turn out.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir, appreciate it.
Thank you.
These guys make me feel old. Okay, if there's no questions from any of the council, I accept the motion to close the, testimony portion of this hearing.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilman Stoddard, second by Councilman Williams, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Evidence list, I have staff report and paperwork and Mr. Arola's, presentation. Anything else?
Clerk hire, Benediction.
Okay, so, okay. Staff reports, the new,
Staging plan?
yes, and then the presentation given by TO engineers.
Yeah, sounds good.
I accept the motion to, accept the evidence.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Doty, second by Councilman Stoddard, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any further discussion before we go to decision? All right, I will accept the motion for any direction and decision on this case.
You just want an order of decision, right?
Yes, sir.
The Caldwell City Council accepts the comprehensive plan analysis, findings of fact, and conclusions of law in the staff report, public testimony, T&O testimony based on the findings of fact, conclusions of law. The mayor and city council hereby order that case number ANN 21-000001, a proposed annexation of 45.62 acres with a zone designation of H-C Highway Corridor, and case number PUD 21-000001 with a preliminary plat for Enclave Subdivision, a mixed-use commercial and residential planned unit development is approved with the conditions of approval listed below to be enumerated in a development agreement. That cover it?
Yeah, I think so. Are we good there, Ms. Root, in your?
Okay, so, yes, I'm good with that, unless you want to restrict the number of units that can be built before a second access is provided.
Yeah, I think that we should.
You would need that in your motion.
Okay. So,
The 19 we suggested.
I would suggest that the fire district requires a second access anytime that you exceed, or when you exceed 30 units. So you could go to the 30, or you could do as indicated in their phasing plan with, just the 19 single-family residential units. So if that's up to you. They should not be able to exceed 30, which would be the fire district's requirement without having a second access.
yeah,
Include that.
okay, yeah.
I would include that in my motion.
So that,
The 30.
30.
Yeah,
So when they hit 30, there'll be 2 access.
right.
And Ms. Root, there was some discussion about them doing phase 1 and 2 together. Are you okay with that? As long as when they hit 30, there's 2 accesses? That's what was discussed here in their presentation.
That is what was discussed, and yes, that's the prerogative. We would need a new phasing plan if that's what they chose to do.
Thank you. Okay, so Councilman Stoddard has made a motion. Second by Councilman Williams. Will the clerk call the roll, please?
Dottie?
Yes.
action item number 5, which is,
So moved.
moved by Councilman Static, seconded by Councilwoman Register, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, are we there, Debbie?
Yep, we're there, we're ready.
Okay, action item number 5 is the partnering ordinance. This is bill number 11, ordinance number 3331, for case number ANN 21000001, with the request to waive the rules and pass on first reading and approve the summary for publication. This is bill number 11, ordinance number 3331, an ordinance determining that certain land lays contiguous to the city limits of the city of Caldwell, county of Canyon, state of Idaho, and that said land should be annexed to the city of Caldwell, Idaho, as part of the highway corridor zone, declaring said lands by proper legal description as described below to be a part of the city of Caldwell, Canyon County, Idaho, directing city engineer and planning and zoning director to add said property to the official maps of the city of Caldwell, Idaho, repealing all ordinances, resolutions, orders, or parts thereof in conflict herewith, and directing the clerk of the city of Caldwell to file a certified copy of the ordinance and map of the area to be annexed with Canyon County, state of Idaho, and the Idaho State Tax Commission pursuant to Idaho Code Section 63-215.
President,
Mr. Williams.
I move to waive the three reading process and consider bill number 11, ordinance 3331 on its first reading by title only.
Thank you. Moved by Councilor Williams, seconded by Councilor Doty. Clerk, call the roll, please.
Williams,
Yes.
Doty,
Yes.
Register,
Yes.
Scotty,
Yes.
McGee.
Yes.
Thank you. Will sponsor the bill?
Mr. President,
Mr. Williams.
I move to sponsor bill number 11, ordinance number 3331, move for the passage by title only and approve the summary for publication.
Thank you. Moved by Councilor Williams, seconded by Councilor Doty. Clerk, call the roll, please.
Williams,
Yes.
Scotty,
Yes.
Doty,
Yes.
McGee,
Yes.
Register.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, action item number 6 is acceptance of the finance report.
Let me get to it. I have it right here. Mr. President,
Councilor Williams.
I move that accounts payable in the amount of $3,182,157.47, represented by check numbers 161300 through 161608, and payroll for the amount of $476,510.69, represented by check numbers 37195 through 37235, and direct deposits be accepted, payments approved, and vouchers filed in the office of the city clerk.
Moved by Councilor Williams, seconded by Councilor Doty. All in favor to accept the finance report?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Council reports. Councilor Register, how are you tonight?
Good.
Have better nights, huh?
Yes, I do not have a report tonight.
Thank you. Councilor Static?
Mr. President, there's gonna be an important, airport commission meeting this Thursday at, noon. I want to tell Mr. Orton, I had a previous occasion I can't get out of, but I'll be about 10 or 15 minutes late. I just want you to know that, but I'll be there. Okay. And the other thing, I just want this board to, not necessarily reconsider, but think about what this new urban renewal district is gonna do to us relative to taxes. And, with all the problems we've had with not having enough money for schools, fire, police, and all the other things, I talked with the county appraiser and the controller, and they're estimating it's gonna take about $174 million of taxes away in the next 20 years, which is about $8.6 million a year, and that's money we could desperately use for other occasions. So, later on, I told the mayor I will bring this up relative to, a motion to rescind the new urban renewal district and put it on the table until maybe some years later, but I just want you to know what's coming down the pipe.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Doty?
and how they cooperated with the subdivisions, and maybe if we can lead in that direction legally, Mr. Waterman, when they come with, proposals, that would be, beneficial to the schools, so.
Thank you. Mr. Williams?
Nothing tonight.
Mr. McGee?
Not tonight.
All right, thank you. Start feeling better. I do not have anything either. And we will.
Mr. President, I think you've done a fantastic job again tonight, we appreciate it.
Oh, well, thank you very much, I appreciate that. Make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, guys. I do enough there. Do you have a bunch of stuff for me to sign, Debbie?
My grandmother had a house in that area. We have a few apartments. And we don't have any subdivision that way.
Have you met my wife, Sharon? No, I haven't. Hi.
Hi, Dave.
Mr. Summers, I'm a friend of, Dave Moody. Oh. He said, you guys are practically neighbors. We are, right up here in North Yes. I never see him, he's always in and out. Oh, I know. And I'm always in and out, but I appreciate it, thank you. Sure. Nice to meet you. I'm not going to. From my understanding, they don't do it for 20 years. All that appreciation is coming along, not that money goes back to urban renewal until over in sunset, and then it all goes to the city. So that's why this is taxes that where they are when urban renewal does, and any appreciation and the increased taxes that go with it, go to their. So what, that's why I'm saying when you make it smaller, you don't have that big burden. Because this one may be 10 years or so, or 5 years, and you get this development done. And then it sunsets in the 6th year, and those increase in taxes, well, this one's going to, so they overlap, basically. That's what I see. I just started, they just got $985,000 for pickleball court space. For urban renewal. Urban renewal. You know, I mean, I don't know if that's a project to get. It's not. So, I'm trying to figure it out. I don't see what's happening. Good to see you.
Yeah, some of you will, or we'll run over you with the wind. They just are gonna be, you know, then, you know, so